Hello, my name is Noam, as you know. In this presentation, I'm going to check the question. I'm comparing two kinds of testimonies. Testimonies that were given by self-initiation, by people, that is ego documents, memories, letters, and diaries. And on the other hand, testimonies that were invited by institutions. People were asked to give the testimonies. And I will dwell on the unique characteristics of each. This is an example of a document of a diary written by Sewek Okonowski. He was a Jew in Warsaw. Unfortunately, he was killed during the Polish rebellion in the Warsaw uprising in '44. But in the time that he was hidden on the Aryan side of Warsaw, he wrote a diary. And we are going to analyze parts of this diary. And we also have letters and memoirs, but I will talk now just about the diaries and letters. On the other hand, I compared three examples of institutionally commissioned testimonies. One of them is the archive of the Jewish National Committee. This was an underground Jewish organization on the Aryan side of Warsaw after the liquidation of the ghetto. And this organization collected testimonies from people, from Jews that wanted to hide on the Aryan side. They asked them to write their biographies for different reasons. One reason was to make sure that they are not agents of the Gestapo, but another reason was that they wanted to have documents for the time after the war as a documentation. And these people sent the letters, one-page letter, and these letters were collected by this organization, mainly by Adolf Berman, who was head of this organization. And when he came to Israel in 1950, he brought it with him and donated it to the Ghetto Fighters' House in the 70s. Here we can see an example of a request of 18 people that were hidden somewhere in Warsaw for around a year, and they have been blackmailed for several times. Even though this is just a letter asking for help, we can regard it as a testimony because they describe their conditions, what are the problems, and what are different things. And 2 weeks ago, the daughter of one of them came to our office, to the Ghetto Fighters' House. She didn't know about her father. She just asked to have something about my father, Stanislav Holzkener, and my mother, Zofia London. And I said, of course we have. And I showed her this one and another testimony of her father. The second group of institutional commission testimonies is a collection of testimonies from a DP camp, from Bergen-Belsen DP camp, collected by Ilana Vrobel-Kagan, Dr. Ilana Vrobel-Kagan. She collected dozens or more of pupils. She opened a new gymnasium, she and Littman, in this DP camp. And she asked the children, among other things, to write a composition called My Way Until Bergen-Belsen DP Camp. And the children wrote in different languages, Yiddish, Russian, German, and they did not have papers. You can see here that this paper is a German document. They just used the paper because they were short of papers. And Stella Lewinska, for example, she writes here her testimony. The third group of institutional commission testimonies is testimonies that I will talk about, is testimonies sent by Jews to German authorities in the 60s and 70s to get reparations. These are quite more formal versions, testimonies, because they describe their health condition in order to get compensation. Okay, and I will start now with the characteristics of each of the groups. Here we can see a letter written by Ida Weisberger from Austria. She was old at that time, and I will read a part of it just to show how letters, personal letters, can cover. I want to dwell now about different characteristics of ego documents, of testimonies given by how do I make the back? one of the characteristics is that personal writing covers a very wide range of topics according to the identity of the writer. For example, I will write some passage of a letter. My letter today, the letter that I'm writing today, you will receive only in the end of the war, when I won't be alive anymore. I'm sending you as a memory of mine the cooking book of my mother and my last photo. Until now, I was alive, and I went on living in my apartment, with the only Jewish apartment in the town. The last years were hell, and in the hell that was in Vienna, I saw how my friends have to go with a yellow star. But I decided not to participate in any deportation, or I don't want to be in the ghetto as well. And I succeeded in getting for myself a big amount of veronal, poison, in order to close my life, stop my life by my own hands. Since I bought it, I'm happy. I'm not afraid of anything, not from transports, not from ghettos, not from being old, not from being blind. And since then, I'm living an intensive life. After many years of suffer, I enjoy from everything, from the sun, from the smell of the flowers, from the birds, from the light of the moon, from the weather, from the clouds. I feel very calm with the fact that I cannot change anything, just I have to accept the situation. So we're here in this example, we can see different things that she's talking about, a large variety of topics like friends, cooking book, denunciations, nature, psychological aspect of her, and she's very reflective. Here we can see another letter, postcard written by a German Jew. She survived, she came to Palestine in 1939, and she writes it. She used to live in Karlsruhe in Germany, and for 1 week she goes to Switzerland for vacation. And she describes in a letter to her brother in Kibbutz Yalta Shachar, she says, among others, have you heard of the new rules in Germany? Everything that we are not allowed to do freely? I want to add something else. Here it is so beautiful. I can enjoy my vacation abroad. And then she jumps from one subject to another, which leads us to another characteristic of self-initiated testimonies, that they are very associative, and the narrative is very flexible. They don't adjust just one form, because they can write whatever they want. Another characteristic is a self-censorship. Everyone censors himself when he expresses something about his private life. But when we talk about self-initiated testimonies, the censorship comes from within. Because she, like for example, someone doesn't want to talk about his private life, or another thing that he wants to impress other people. If he has guilt feelings about something, he won't say it. The censorship, the decision what to omit and what to stress is personal, comes out of personal motives, unlike what we'll see later with the other kind. Here we can see Basia Temkin-Berman. Basia Temkin-Berman, she was the wife of Adolf Berman in Warsaw. She was also part of this Jewish underground. And she wrote a diary during the war in 1944. And she refers in her diary to this self-censorship, because she says, I know in the first page of her diary, she says, I know very well that a foreign eye will read my diary, but it is okay. I think it's important. The life that we live today is not a regular life, and it's a must that everybody will read the diary, even though it's private. Another aspect of the self-initiated testimonies is therapy. Many people write letters or diaries as a kind of therapy. It enables them to hold the sufferer or the trauma, to give it a frame, to say that all of the bad things are in one frame, and I can live, I am ruling the problems. And here we can see the diary of Maria Jacob. She was from Cluj, and from Auschwitz she was brought to Oberheide in northern Germany, and there she writes. She's writing a diary. We hold the diary in the ghetto fighters' house, and among others, she refers to the fact that she did have a diary already in Auschwitz, but this diary was stolen from her, and she says that even when she was naked in the bathroom in Auschwitz, she never felt so exposed as the moment when she lost her diary there. And she continues, and she said the diary is kind of a friend to her, that she takes it wherever she goes, it's kind of self. And also Alexandra Garberini, that she was researching diaries. Among others, she says that in many diaries, every new paragraph is a victory. It means that I'm still alive. If I came until now to write a new passage, it means that until today I'm still alive. Now we'll turn to other testimonies that were invited by institutions. And here we can see in the middle, Janina Heschel's Kalman. She's still alive today. She lives in Haifa. She's a professor of chemistry. She's an amazing woman. And she wrote a diary after she was in Yanovska camp near Lvov, and the underground smuggled her out once they heard that she writes poems. And in her hiding place, she wrote a kind of a diary, or 3 weeks after Yanovska, about her memories, and it's called In the Eyes of a 12-Year-Old Girl. Yeah, and it was published already in the war in 1944, translated to many languages. Last week it was translated also into German. And here we can see her parents. Her father was the head of a Jewish, very famous newspaper in Lvov, and he was one of the first victims in June 41. The first characteristic that I want to talk about by this kind of testimonies, as invited by institutions, is that people stick to tangible facts. They want to say, in this date, this and this happened, names, events. And she was asked by Adam Borowski, who rescued her, to write what she remembers, everything that she remembers. She was asked. She did what she was asked. But the point is that she gave too many information. And among others, she wrote that her father was arrested by the Soviets, put into jail, and tortured and so on. And when it was published in 1946, this whole chapters of 4 pages was omitted, because she wrote all of the details because she was asked to write the details, but she didn't know that the Soviet regime won't like it. The second characteristic is a collective ethos, the influence of a collective ethos. In many cases, people that were asked by institutions to write the testimonies, they live in the same space or the same time. For example, the pupils that around in the DP camp, Bergen-Belsen DP camp, around Ilan Vrobel Kagan, they were asked by her, and she was Zionist, to write the testimonies. And we see that all of their testimonies end in a very similar Zionist slogans. For example, here we can see her in the front row right. Here we can see a testimony of one of the girls, Leah Hassman. In the end of her testimony, she says like that: "Today we are heading a huge task, and we are standing in front of a very revolutionary moment in the life of the Jewish people. As we dreamed before about liberated from the Germans, today we are aspiring to conquer our homeland, the beautiful and faraway homeland. Head up, the victory is ours." And then another one, Schechter, he writes about the soldiers of the Jewish brigade, the Jewish soldiers that came to the DP camps and helped. And he said that they are the models of masculine model, is very adorative. Here we see another example of collective ethos. This drawing was made in Apeldoorn in Holland, in a huge building that was used after the war to have 500 Jewish children from Romania on the way to Palestine. And there they had the Jewish education, they sang songs, they learned many things, they were in groups according to their youth movements. And once their leader, Benjamin Zussman, went to Palestine, everyone wrote him a kind of letter and poems. For example, in one of the, I didn't bring it, but one of the children is describing a map of Palestine. And this map, there are only two places, 2 points of the map. Can you think which ones?
And Hamod
Okay, you're on the direction. One is Jerusalem. No, one is Tel Aviv. Jerusalem does not exist. No, it's not important. One is Tel Aviv. The other one is Kibbutz Yagur. Kibbutz Ramat Yochanan. Because the leader, this man came from Ramat Yochanan, so they imagine that Ramat Yochanan is the most important. Yeah. And here we see a Jewish famous song about being a proletariat, building the country and so on. Another characteristic is to shape the testimony according to what is expected to you, to omit certain things and to stress other things. And here we have an example of an interesting letter written by a Polish woman on Warsaw, and she found a small child after his parents were taken, and she decides to adopt him. The father died, was murdered, the Jewish mother survived, but she is not with the child. Every now and then the mother comes to ask how is the child, but this Polish woman, she's taking care of the child. And I'll read some of her texts because you can see how she narrates her letter in order to have a full gain from, she is asking for money. She's asking the underground, the Zhigota, the Polish underground and the Jewish underground for money. And she said like that: I'm taking care of Alfred Zubek since June 43. I knew his mother through relatives, in very coincidental, in the day when their apartment was exposed and by blackmailers. Since then, I adopted the child and I gave him my name. His mother is in Warsaw, but she didn't give me her address. Every now and then she asks if everything is okay. The father was taken to Auschwitz. Since then, we have no information about him. I don't know the second name of the parents. I got a birth certificate under this name that the parents did themselves. In the last time, I faced economical problems and I'm asking for a very quick help. And here comes an interesting thing. My husband, an ex-officer in the Polish army, just came back from the woods and stopped connection with me, saying that the child is the fruit of the war, without knowing his origin. So here she talks about different things. For example, when she tries to persuade to get money, she stresses that she did everything to help him. She thinks she will get more scores by accentuating that. And then she says, my husband is an officer, so he's important, he's a lawyer, officer, engineer, the rank. She mentions his rank. She thinks she might get more money for that. Then she says that he was not only an officer, but he was also in the underground. He was a partisan. When she says that he just came from the woods, he didn't go to the woods to pick flowers. It means that he was in a partizanka. And then she says about that her husband left her because of the child, that he suspected that she slept with another man. I tried to figure out who she was. I failed, and we will never know if it's true or not. It might be true, but it might be a story that she invented in order to get her goal, the money. And then we have, I won't dwell on it, but we'll get to, there's another letter by Ruth Levin, in which she stresses that she was a lawyer and she was active in the youth movement, and she knew Yaakov Vitkin and other ranks that she thinks that will help her. Okay, to conclude, if we compare these two kinds of testimonies, we see that self-initiated testimonies tend to be more personal. They are subjective, associative, reflective, sometimes even therapeutic. They expose personal experiences, even traumatic ones as rape. Forgot to say, but in many of the letters written to Adolf Berman, it was written by people that just underwent traumas like rape. And it's interesting to see that in cases that I know from other sources that this woman had been raped, she doesn't mention it in the letter, in the text, because of self-censorship, because the values at that time were that they were ashamed. So personal documents convey personal worldviews and cover a wide range of aspects. The writers practice an inner censorship in order to stay in line with the prevailing ethos and due to personal motives, such as shame, guilt, apologetics, and the wish to leave a positive impression behind. On the other hand, in the institutional commissioned testimonies, for example, those submitted to the Jewish National Council on the Aryan side of Warsaw in 1944, or those submitted to the Zionist journalist Benjamin Tanner, no, we skip it. Those given to the Zionist educator in Bergen-Belsen DP camp, Dr. Ilana Vrobel-Kagan, and the German reparations authorities, the writers are aware of what is expected of them. They stick to tangible anchors, such as dramatic events, dates and names. They drop seemingly irrelevant details or elaborate on potentially beneficial subjects, as pre-war political activities, for example. They often follow a collective pattern or ethos. These testimonies tend to be more biased, yet contain information that might have been overlooked in a self-initiated testimony. And my conclusion is that when I started checking this subject, I thought that there is a clear cut between ego documents and institutional commission testimonies. But after a while, when I checked the testimonies themselves, I saw that it's impossible to make such a clear cut. For example, when children write testimonies after they're being asked to write testimony by Ilana Vrobel-Kagan, for example, they write what is expected of them in the Zionist phase. Yeah? They say, we want to come to Palestine, to have fields and so on. But when they describe their personal life, they give space to personal emotions. What they felt when their mother went away and what they felt when they met her again. So in this case, this is institutional commission testimony, but still it has characteristic of self-initiated testimony. And that's why I suggest not to divide the two categories in a clear line, but to, I think it's better to see them as being on one line, one long line. On the one edge is the very personal thing, ego documents like a diary, which is most free from all of them. And on the other hand, the most formal, like the reparations forms that Jews from Israel sent to Germany. But in between, the characteristics are not that clear cut. Thank you.